today I am so thrilled to be interviewing Sue Lilly. Many of you may be familiar with her amazing quantity of books. She's a very prolific author about crystals and many other topics. So Sue, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started working with crystals?
Okay. I first came across crystals in 1978 when I was doing a yoga teacher's course. There was somebody on the course who used to cut and shape crystals for Ra Bonowitz, who was then Ron Bonowitz, who was one of the few people who actually had books out and was working with crystals, certainly in the UK at the time. And he came as a guest to the course. And that was the first time I'd really seen crystals in that way, apart from just in mineralogical display or something like that. And that's when I bought my first crystal. I had an amethyst, and it really caught me because of the mix, particularly the way he approached things, the mix of the scientific with the healing side and, if you like, the esoteric spiritual side. That really appealed to me. And so I eventually bought a few crystals to sell on to people. This was before things really caught on at all. And so got used to handling them, got used to working with them, and obviously had them around. But I didn't really do an awful lot more with crystals. As far as setting up any particular healing things or what have you, until I met Simon, my husband, in 1989. And he'd been using crystals as part of his kinesiology work. And so between us, we then started exploring things a lot more.
That's so wonderful to have a partner that you can, embrace that with and explore and play with that energy.
Yeah, because I think it's what was playing with the energy, which I started a little bit on my own, but then we basically worked together. That ended up being the crystal doorways or the crystal nets that were mentioned in several of our books. It started off by, oh, I wonder what will happen if we made a particular shape on the floor and we laid in it or we stood in it and something like that. And that's how they started.
That's wonderful. Well, what would you consider, Sue, is your area of expertise with crystals? What's your specialty with crystal energy?
I think one of the things, and it comes from those days as well, is that is developing techniques for other crystal therapists to use. Because there's plenty of stuff out there about this crystal does that, what have you, what have you. But and obviously now Simon and I do this together, is working out techniques that other people can use easily, so that they've got a fair idea about what the crystals in that setup will do. In other words, I mean, there's a limit, isn't there? I mean, it's like crystals will do some things the same for everybody, but you can't be sure because everybody's an individual. But we found with the patterns that you could be fairly sure, particularly from a therapist viewpoint, that when you did a particular thing with somebody, it would probably have this effect. And so for therapists, that was really handy. You had, and therefore you had some idea of what was going on, what the person's likely to experience, but also the fact that you could repeat it and it would have the same sort of effect. So I think that's probably the area where I'm at my best.
So you really enjoyed giving people those basic techniques as, kind of a foundation for their work, something that they could start with and feel comfortable knowing that they could expect a likely result, knowing that because of each individual person, there would be some variation.
Yes, that's right. So it's really putting the bottom line in for people, because if they're secure with the base, then they can allow their instinct, intuition, and their own preferences to take them where they want to go. Um, but I think it's very important to have a very sound base that you can stand on before you start sort of spiraling up and doing spooky stuff.
I would
So,
agree. Well, and for a lot of people, that gives them the confidence to play with that energy. You know, they want to feel like they have some idea of what they're doing before they just take on that intuitive aspect as well. I think they're both important, the foundation and then the intuitive information. But for a lot of people, it provides that level of comfort and reassurance that they're starting somewhere that is kind of tested and tried.
Yeah, it's a bit like putting girders into a big building. You have to put the girders in first, and then people can fill it in however they like. But it's like in most techniques and skills that both Simon and I teach, we see ourselves as being the people that help them put the girders in, to give them that structure. But it's like it's not restrictive, but you know what I mean? It's not like giving them a menu, you must follow this every time, but it's giving them enough that they have that stability and, like you say, and the confidence in the end to be able to actually do what they want to do. Yeah.
I love that. That's such a great analogy. What would you say that your years of experience with crystal energy has taught you, either about crystals and crystal healing, or in your work with clients, or even in your own self discovery?
I think that little crystals can do some really big stuff. Yeah. Um, I mean, Mrs. Cotton Socks, he'll probably listen to this at some point, but we have a tutor that works under our umbrella. And we were doing some demonstrations, and he said to me one day, we need to demonstrate this technique. Do it on me. I've got to fly next week, and I got to admit I'm scared of flying. I said, "You sure you want to do this?" Yes, yes. Of course, it was in a demonstration, so there was nothing leading up to it, which you would have in a normal therapy session. And so I worked out that he needed one very tiny piece of pink tourmaline on his elbow. Right? And it was on his elbow for about 2 minutes. Okay. Didn't think anything. Get an email 2 days later. Oh, I feel really rough. I don't think I'm going to be able to go on the plane. I feel really bad. I don't know what's going on. Blah, blah. And of course, the classical therapist thing, I say, that's fine. Just drink plenty of water. Just rest. And then when he's gone, thinking, oops. And then when he went to fly, nothing, no fear. He was able to look out the window, enjoy the view, because he was just going to Europe, so he didn't fly very high. And there you have one tiny little crystal on the elbow. And so that's just indicative. You don't need big crystals. They don't have to be super, super shiny, shiny, perfect crystals, because no matter how they look, they are still crystalline at the very, very heart of what they do. And it's all a question of, in some places, is where they need to go. But they can move mountains, But normally you do it something in part of a therapy session and not as a demo. So you wouldn't normally get that sort of response, a healing crisis, because you've done stuff before, done stuff after to smooth things out. But it does give you an idea how powerful they can be.
And how, you described his reaction or response to this energy. Do you think that that was a release on his part? And how do you normally work through that with a client?
Yeah, very much so. It doesn't happen very often. The way that we teach therapy and other therapies as well is you wouldn't normally do things in isolation. They'd be part of a package. And the intent of the package you put together for the client is the safest, easiest way that their body can make the required changes. But inevitably, because everybody's body's different, some people's bodies really like to do the dramatic, all right, I'm going to be whatever. And so it's a standard sort of thing. There's very little that drinking water, resting and grounding won't fix.
I think that's one of the greatest sentences I've ever heard in my life. That's such amazing advice just for everyone to keep in mind. I think all the time Those are words to live by for sure.
Because with those things, you've got everything that you're giving the body the space that it requires to do the healing.
Yes. And Sue, what would you say is one of the things that you enjoy the most about crystal healing? What is it about the crystals themselves that brings you joy?
That they're beautiful, um, and most of the time they're colourful, although I do work a lot with ones that aren't pretty. Um, and I think the fact that the thought that moving something as rebellious as a little stone or a few stones around somebody can have such a dramatic effect is appeals to the rebel in me.
I love that.
You know, because it's almost like I don't expect stuff, but I'm always surprised when it works. I know it sounds crazy, even for myself. You know, I think, oh gosh, I need to go and do this, this, and this, and think, oh, it worked. This, oh yes, it worked. You know, and keep it, and and that always is pleasing.
Yes. Well, and I love that you say it's almost like a surprise every time because I think I resonate with that as well. I feel that sometimes. And it's not that you're anticipating that it won't work. It's just such amazing confirmation kind of over and over when it continues to work for you.
And then passing that on to your students or the people who write who read what you write. That's part of what's really good, is that you know that you're passing that on, and hopefully they'll also have, you know, that surprise, that joy, and the confirmation, you know, that they're not going crackers, and that, you know, even though their family might think they are.
Right. Speaking of that, have you ever encountered a situation where you were dealing with the difficulty of explaining what you do to others who may be skeptical or unsure or unwilling to accept this kind of information? And when you were in that experience, how do you overcome that? How do you work through that?
Well, basically, you're always going to get people like that, you know, and the bottom line is, tend to say to people, well, I'll tell you what, you come for a free session and then we'll talk about that afterwards. But until you've actually experienced it, you know, that's the thing. You have to get them into a position where they actually, you do some work on them. And that's when people realize that, you know, that it's not crazy. You'll always have people in the press and on the TV debunking it. But I think that goes for anything that either they don't want to understand or they're unwilling to understand for whatever reason.
And have you ever encountered any other challenges in your work as a professional healer? I mean, have an author? Have there been things that have come up that have been struggles for you? Maybe that, or maybe in your work with sharing this information with people, maybe you've had other therapists contact you with some of their struggles. And what advice would you have for therapists who are wanting to pursue this as a career, but maybe catching some of those hang-ups that people have?
Well, apart from saying exactly what I said, say to the people, come for a session. And the other thing I find that works, and I used to find this even way, way back, because obviously when I came across crystals, I was on a yoga teacher's course. And so one of the things people used to sort of come up and say was like, oh yeah, you know, what are you doing? You know, going to sit somewhere quiet and contemplate your navel or something. And I just used to laugh and say, well, yes, actually, you know, and I might even stand on my head when I'm doing it. You know what I mean? So to actually bring some humor into it, so not to take it on board, but to appreciate that from their point of view, it looks mad, it looks crazy.
Well, and I think that's important, right? Putting yourself in that other person's shoes and appreciating their perspective on the situation so that you can better understand it. And there are a few things that humor can't shift the energy of almost immediately, right?
And it's just getting, I think the trouble is when people first start as new therapists, particularly, those responses don't come very quickly. You know, it's like the things happened, and 5 minutes later you're thinking, ah, I should have said that. But I think that the longer you're doing it, the quicker those responses come. And so you don't take on board the other person's doubts. But I think initially it is hard to have those quick responses and those tongue-in-cheek, you know, those sort of things, and laughing with somebody about what you do. If you know it works, you can laugh at it.
Right. And do you think that comes just from experience, or do you think that confidence is kind of intertwined with that?
I think they come together. Yeah, I think it's because I think when you have doubts, which everybody has when they first start, it's so easy to get knocked and to become disheartened, or to start questioning your own judgment or your own instincts and things like that. So yes, they comes together. It's the two things, and it just comes with seeing lots of people and meeting people when they know what you do.
So for people that really hang in there as therapists and work through that little bit of a rough patch in the beginning, the rewards are obviously quite wonderful.
Yes, but it's getting through that little bit in the beginning. And I think that's when you need to have people around you, or at least one other person that you can go to, and you can, sort of, help, this sort of thing. And someone just say, yeah, you're okay. Like, you're okay, kid, just keep going. Yeah.
And after all of your years of experience working with healing crystals and teaching others about crystal therapy, do you have any advice for the people who are watching who are looking to build a crystal therapy practice?
I would say, in the end, things go by word of mouth. It's almost like you can throw a lot of money at advertising things, but if you're good at what you do, start off small, start off local, and by all means go to groups in the evening of people and explain what you do. Be prepared for people to make fun of you, but very, very slowly. And it's like all you need is a handful of people who think you're good, and they will then talk. And it's worth it. It's by far the best way for things to go. And I think that goes for most complementary therapies as well. Not just crystals. I think that if you're really good at what you do, people find out.
And that really goes to building genuine relationships with the people that you work with, and having them, like you said, experience what it is that you do and see what it is that you offer and how you can be of service to them.
That's right, yes. But I think one of the disadvantages, if you are in a position that you can throw a lot of money at advertising skills of what you do, you'll get a lot of people that just are voyeurs. They just come, they're actually not seriously needing your help. Whereas it's much better if you're actually working with people who genuinely need you for whatever reason, because I think they're more open, and in the end it's their body that does the healing, and if their body's not open to it, then it doesn't matter what you do.
So yeah, it's better to have those people that are really looking to create positive change in their lives rather than people who want to come see you once out of a curiosity.
Yes, I mean, although having said that, that's maybe you will get some feedback and you will maybe get something from those people, but having just those people isn't going to build you a practice.
And it probably doesn't work the same way to build your skills as a healer either. I mean, I learned so much more from working with clients on repeat visits than I did just from the initial visit when I was doing sessions much more frequently, because you get to know a person, you get to know their body and their energy and how you can best serve them. And it's really interesting to see those changes progress and realize that they're making these positive changes with the help of the crystal energy to facilitate that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Sue, is there anything that you'd like to share about any upcoming projects or books that you have, or tell people where they can find you online?
They can find, I mean, obviously they can find books and things in Amazon and other places like that. But if to find us direct online, we're www.greenmanshop, all one word, .co.uk. And there you've got all the books and lots of other bits and pieces. and some of them are more unusual stuff that we do, like you can get Priscelli Bluestone from us on there, which obviously is tied into one of the books we did a couple of years ago. And that's probably the site, because we have several sites, but that's probably the site where it gives you the broadest access to the sort of things that we do. And including other bits. I mean, both. I mean, I'm particular. I mean, I'm astrologer as well, and so obviously the links between crystals and astrology and all the rest. Everything all dovetails together, and it's like I was explaining to somebody a couple of weeks ago that it's really, I suppose, an energy therapist is really the sort of thing that best describes what I do. But I use various tools depending, but it's all energy based. And of course, crystals is a very large chunk of that.
Absolutely. Well, Sue, it was a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to share everything that you have to give with people who are watching. I'm sure people will take great things out of this experience and this interview. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you all for watching. Crystal blessings.